Hi everybody, a couple of quick notes. These are excerpts from student submissions. So here is one about the triangle, and as you can see, the student is asking the user for lengths and doing the calculation for the area, and then has this check method, which I notice is never actually run from inside calculator or anywhere else. And the check method has some other variables and then the exact same calculation being run here. So whenever you see that you have the same code in multiple places, that's a sign that you should be using a method. So here is a fast way to make this code a heck of a lot better. Let's take the code that's doing the calculation that we want, and we'll cut it. And now I'll make a variable called area, and I'll call the method triangle area, and I'll give it A, B, and C as input. So now let's create the method, and we can paste that code into there. And now A, B, and C are whatever the inputs to the method are. And so it's calculating whatever it's going to calculate. And I'm just going to return the square root of D at the end. So now I can reuse this. Here I can calculate the triangle area, and then here I can do the same thing. Instead of having all this repeated code, I can again do the triangle area, and now I don't even need to define A, B, and C. I can just say 4, 2, 2 if that's what I wanted to do. So that's sort of a lot shorter and a lot nicer. One thing that was even a little bit nicer that I saw a student do was defining a method called getUserInput, where there's a prompt, and then getUserInput creates a new scanner and displays the prompt and then returns whatever the user's asked for. So you should feel free to create your own methods whenever you think it would enhance the readability or the usability of your code. Here's somebody's solution for the die rolling problem, and the random integers between 1 and 6 look like they're working great, and the print statement looks like it's working great. What's a little unusual is using a while loop to loop 20 times. This isn't wrong, this will loop 20 times, but it's conventional only to use a while loop if the test condition here is something where you don't know when it's going to be true. So maybe you're looping until the user enters a particular number or something, and you don't know how many times it will have to loop before that happens. If you're looping a fixed number of times, like 20 times, it's more normal just to have a for loop. Oops. Like that, where you go from 0 up to 20, and then you don't bother with any counters like that because your loop counter up here is doing the counting for you. Okay, here's the last example. So this student is making a wind chill method, and this is sort of the main code that does the calculation and is what almost everybody did. But they wanted to have a bunch of conditions that would display things if one of the two parameters was in an invalid range. And the result ends up looking kind of messy, and the student wanted to know, is there sort of a cleaner way of doing it? So it all depends on what kinds of messages you want to display. We could just delete all of these if we wanted to and have an else. So we're saying if MPH is in the right range and also temp is in the right range, then do the calculation and return it. Otherwise, you could just return the original temperature, because wind chill doesn't apply, or this formula doesn't apply if the parameters are outside of the valid ranges. So that's like a lot shorter, but obviously we're not displaying any error messages. So here you could do something like temp is outside valid range of whatever, so temp or MPH are outside their valid ranges of blah or blah. So something like that, but that also doesn't tell the user which of the two parameters was incorrect. So if you really wanted to tell them your temp is invalid or your MPH is invalid, then you would need to test for those things separately. And I think a nice way of doing that might be to test for the invalid parameters at the very beginning before anything else happens. So you could say something like, well, I forgot what the ranges were now. Oh, here they are. So if MPH is less than or equal to 3, that's invalid. Or if MPH is greater than or equal to 120. So if either of those things are happening, then you could say MPH it isn't in range 3 to 120. I guess it would be open brace. And you could just return temp. Then you could say the same thing for MP8, or same thing for temp. So if temp is less than or equal to -50, or temp is greater than or equal to 50, same thing. You would print out your stuff, and then if neither of those things are true, then you know it must be in a valid range, and so now you don't need to put the if statement here. You could just return the wind chill. And we don't even really need the wind chill variable. You could just return the, you could just return the result of that calculation. So this is not the shortest, but it's sort of a short way that you could have specific error messages depending on which parameter was invalid. A totally other thing you could do, you guys don't know about exceptions, but a different thing you could do is you could throw a custom exception. Exception is sort of the Java name for a runtime error. So you could have a custom runtime error, and you could throw that runtime error, and then whoever ran this would have to handle the invalid parameters that it was passed themselves. Okay, I think that's it. Cool. If you have any other questions, please email me, and good luck on the next set.